Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2. In this season, we're reading through the different books of the Tanakh following the Torah and providing my own interpretation of what I think it all means. This week's Tanakh portion is chapters 4 through 6 of Yehoshua, the book of Joshua, landing during the Torah portion Lech Lecha, falling on the 8th of Cheshvan, 5785, November 9th, 2024. You could follow along with the Torah portion from Season 1 of the Weekly Parashahcast, Episode 3. As for us, we'll be jumping in right now to Joshua chapter 4 and providing interpretation. As always, I am not a professional Tanakh scholar, just somebody who wanted to study the Tanakh. Let's begin. Yehoshua chapter 4, verse 1. And it was when all the nation had completely passed over the Jordan, the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, Take to yourselves 12 men from the people, a man from every tribe, and command them, saying, Take to yourselves from here out of the midst of the Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, 12 stones, and you shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where you shall lodge this night. And Joshua called the 12 men, whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, a man from every tribe. And Joshua said to them, Pass before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and lift up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask in time to come, saying, What are these stones for you? Then you shall say to them, that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be for a memorial to the children of Israel forever. And the children of Israel did as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the midst of the Jordan, as the Lord had spoken to Joshua, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, and carried them over with them to the place where they lodged, and laid them there. And Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests who bore the ark of the covenant stood, and they have been there to this day. And the priests that bore the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished that the Lord had commanded Joshua to speak to the people, according to all that Moses commanded Joshua. And the people hastened and passed over. And it was, when all the people had completely passed over, that the ark of the Lord passed over, and the priests in the presence of the people. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh passed over, armed before the children of Israel, as Moses had spoken to them. About 40,000 armed for war passed over before the Lord to battle, to the plains of Jericho. On that day the Lord made Joshua great in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they had feared Moses all the days of his life. And the Lord said to Joshua, saying, Command the priests that bear the ark of the testimony, that they come up out of the Jordan. And Joshua commanded the priests, saying, Come up out of the Jordan. And it was, when the priests that bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord came up out of the midst of the Jordan, that as soon as the soles of the priests' feet were lifted up to the dry land, the waters of Jordan returned to their place, and flowed over all its banks as before. And the people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and encamped in Gilgal, in the east border of Jericho. And these 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up in Gilgal. And he spoke to the children of Israel, saying, When your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What are these stones? Then you shall let your children know, saying, Israel came over this Jordan on dry land. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan from before you, until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up from before us, until we passed over. That all the people of the earth might know the power of the Lord, that it is mighty, that you might fear the Lord your God forever. End of chapter 4. All right, so let's recap. As we may recall from last time, the people of Israel are crossing over the Jordan River. The Ark of the Covenant is leading the way and is causing the waters to part as the different men, the priests, are holding this ark through the water. Now, it seems that they actually chose to stay inside of the river the entire time until the people all passed by. Now, additionally, these 12 stones are taken, again, a testimony from each of the 12 tribes, 1 stone per tribe, to be a living, or I guess not living, but a firm testament in the ground to place later to commemorate this event. Now, the significance here of doing this, again, this is Joshua's first major campaign. Moses is not here. How do the people know that God is still with them? Well, having your new leader able to orchestrate this entire thing alongside God's commands is definitely a good way to establish faith in this new leader. So, as it says at the end, because of this, they realized that Joshua was powerful in the way Moses was, and that they feared him for all his life, that he had this level of power with God. And it's also a reminder that this is a witness matter. This is something that will be testimonial in the future, that this all went down. So it's very significant, obviously, and it's also not just about establishing the current day, we're going to win this thing. It's about building a legacy that's going to last for future generations. So we're going to be encamping in Gilgal. Let's go ahead and jump into chapter 5. Chapter 5, verse 1 of the book of Joshua. And it came to pass when all the kings of the Amorites who were on the side of the Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites who were by the sea, heard that the Lord had dried up the waters of the Jordan from before the children of Israel until they had passed over, that their heart melted, nor was there spirit in them any more, because of the children of Israel. At that time the Lord said to Joshua, Make for yourselves sharp knives, and circumcise again the children of Israel the second time. And Joshua made for himself sharp knives, and circumcised the children of Israel at the hill of the foreskins. And this is the reason why Joshua did circumcise. All the people that came out of Egypt, that were males, all the men of war, had died in the desert by the way after they came out of Egypt. For all the people that came out were circumcised. But all the people that were born in the wilderness by the way as they came forth out of Egypt, they had not circumcised. For the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness, until all the people, the men of war, that came out of Egypt were consumed, those who did not listen to the voice of the Lord, to whom the Lord had sworn that he would not show them the land, which the Lord had sworn to their forefathers that he would give us, a land that flows with milk and honey. And their children, whom he raised up in their stead, them Joshua circumcised, for they had not circumcised them by the way. And it was, when all the people were finished being circumcised, that they remained in their places in the camp until they recovered. And the Lord said to Joshua, This day I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. And he called the name of the place Gilgal to this day. And the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal, and they made the Passover sacrifice on the 14th day of the month at the evening, in the plains of Jericho. And they ate the grain of the land, and the marrow of the Passover, unleavened cakes and parched grain on this very day. And the manna ceased on the morrow when they ate of the grain of the land, neither had the children of Israel manna any more. And they ate of the produce of the land of Canaan that year. And it was when Joshua was in Jericho that he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, a man was standing opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, Are you for us, or for our adversaries? And he said, No, but I am the captain of the host of the Lord. I have now come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth, and prostrated himself, and said to him, What does my Lord say to his servant? And the captain of the Lord's host said to Joshua, Remove your shoe from your foot, for the place upon which you stand is holy. And Joshua did so. Alrighty, so now rolling ahead to the beginning once again to go over what happened here. The Amorites and the Canaanites, all the kings of the land of Israel, all these people that are here on this side of the Jordan, they've got reports that these Israelites have crossed the Jordan, the river stopped flowing. Oh Lord, they're coming. We are in trouble. And it says, their hearts melted away, their spirits were no longer in them. They were doomed, and they knew it. And so they just completely were crestfallen. They knew their time was up. Now, with that being said, there's something important that needs to be done here. Now that they've crossed into the land, Joshua is told that all of the people need to be circumcised. Scenario: while the people that came out of Egypt were circumcised, their newborn children were not. And if we think about it, that kind of makes sense. If you're on the move every day, moving from camp to camp to camp, it takes time to recover during the period after the circumcision. After all, this exact period of recovery was used earlier in the Torah to take advantage of a group of people that the sons of Israel basically wanted to obliterate. They made them get circumcised, and while all the men were recovering from being circumcised, they came in and slew them all, right? So this is a very painful ordeal, and it's something that the people, that they just never had done. And so they were in full spirit supportive of God and believers of God, but now by circumcising themselves, they have formally crossed over into being a holy people. They have taken that vow, that covenant that seals the deal. And now before battle, it's time. They're going to rest, recover, take their time, and then they're going to go ahead and have their Passover sacrifice. Once the Passover meal and everything is done, the next day, it says that the manna no longer fell for them. Instead, they were eating of the land. So there's a great significance here. Up until this point, they were at the mercy of God's manna production. And they were also uncircumcised, so they were basically like innocent children wandering with a protector and a guardian feeding them. Now that they've reached the land and now that they've been circumcised, they have received the land that they were to inherit, right? This is part of the covenant of Abraham. And so that's how I interpret that. By being circumcised and honoring the Passover Seder, they have effectively said, it's time for graduation. We are now in the land and we will live off the land, this holy land. We no longer need the manna. We have now been freed of that particular blessing because now we are capable of gathering for ourselves from the land that we have been given. So it's a very significant transition from being subsidized on manna to now being able to support themselves with the land. Now, with that being said, it's a reminder also that everybody from Egypt, except for Caleb and Joshua, were wiped out from the old generation. So this is truly a fresh generation in all respects, except for those two men. Now, with that being said, the last thing that happens as they're getting ready to head toward Jericho, there's a strange man that they don't know. Joshua sees this man, and he's got a sword drawn. And so he draws near the guy, and he says, "Are you friend or foe?" And the guy responds to him, "I'm the captain of the heavenly host," meaning, I am an angel of God. I'm his captain. So this is basically the captain of God's army or personal guard, if you want, whatever you want to call it in human terms, who has just appeared before Joshua. Joshua immediately understands, oh boy, this is serious, and he lowers himself to the ground. He says, "Please, what must you tell me? I'm all ears." And he's told basically, "You're standing on holy ground, take off your shoes," and he does so. And that is the end of the chapter, but this is a very significant moment. Again, an angel directly comes in and lets you know you're on holy ground. So it really further emphasizes that this land, this holy land, is truly special, that you are now stepping on it with your feet. Take your shoes off. Now we move into chapter 6, the last chapter for this week's episode. Verse 1. And Jericho had shut its gates and was barred because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have given into your hand Jericho and its king, the mighty warriors. And you shall circle the city, all the men of war go round about the city once. Thus shall you do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. And on the 7th day you shall encircle the city 7 times. And the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And it shall be that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down in its place, and the people shall go up, every man opposite him." And Joshua the son of Nun called the priests, and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord." And he said to the people, "Pass on, and encircle the city, and let the armed ones pass before the ark of the Lord." And it was when Joshua spoke to the people, and the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns passed on before the ark of the Lord, and blew with the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord followed them. And the armed men went before the priests that blew the trumpets, and the rear guard came after the ark, the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And Joshua commanded the people, saying, "You shall not shout, nor let your voice be heard. Neither shall any word proceed out of your mouth until the day I bid you shout. Then you shall shout." And he caused the ark of the Lord to circle the city, going about it once, and they came into the camp and lodged in the camp. And Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord, and the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord were going continuously, and they blew with the trumpets, and the armed men went before them, and the rear guard came after the ark of the Lord, the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And the 2nd day they circled the city once, and returned to the camp. So they did 6 days. And it was on the 7th day that they rose early at the dawning of the day, and they circled the city after the same manner 7 times. Only on that day they circled the city 7 times. And it was at the 7th time the priests blew with the trumpets, and Joshua said to the people, "Shout, For the Lord has given you the city, and the city shall be devoted, it and all that is in it, to the Lord. Only Rechab the harlot shall live, she and all that is with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. And only you keep yourselves from the devoted thing, lest you make yourselves condemned when you take of the devoted thing, and make the camp of Israel a ruin and trouble it. And all the silver and gold and vessels of copper and iron are consecrated to the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord. And the people shouted, the priests blew with the trumpets, and it was when the people heard the sound of the trumpet that the people shouted with a great shout, and the wall fell down in its place, and the people went up into the city, every man opposite him, and they took the city. And they completely destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, and ox and sheep and ass, with the edge of the sword. And to the 2 men who had spied out the country, Joshua said, Go into the harlot's house, and bring out from there the woman and all that she has, as you swore to her. And the young men who were spies went in and brought out Rechab, and her father and her mother and her brothers and all that she had. And they brought out all her families, and placed them outside the camp of Israel. And they burnt the city with fire, and all that was in it, only the silver and the gold, and the vessels of copper and iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. But Rechab the harlot and her father's household and all that she had, Joshua saved alive. And she dwelt in the midst of Israel to this day, because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. And Joshua adjured them at that time, saying, Cursed be the man before the Lord that rises up and builds this city Jericho. With the loss of his firstborn shall he lay its foundation, and with the loss of his youngest son shall he set up its gates. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was throughout the entire land. End of chapter 6. So we got our payoff. Rechab's deal was a good deal, quite possibly the greatest deal in the history of Jericho trade deals. She saved her entire family by protecting those spies, and indeed the Israelites maintained their deal with her. Very interesting notes. So first off, the 7 circlings of the city, or rather 7 days worth of circling, once a day, and then on the 7th day 7 times with the blasting of the horns and the shouting, it was over for Jericho. Now interestingly, 7 days, I don't know which day in particular, was the day in which they committed this act, so we'd really have to go out of our way. There is a way to chronologically find out. I'm not going to do it right now, but if we know when the year was that they came back according to the Hebrew calendar, so what year this conquest takes place, and we know that it was just the day after Passover, then we can basically figure out which day of the year corresponds to which day of the week. Was it a Sabbath day or not? I'm very curious. Why would God command them to do this for 7 days inclusively? 6 days would have made sense because that means that 1 day is the Sabbath day and therefore it's fine. But, interestingly, this is a 7-day circling campaign, so I'm curious which of these 7 days was the Sabbath day, because you're supposed to rest on that day, but God is explicitly telling them, no, you're going to do this. So I'm almost curious to believe that it would be on that 7th day where they marched around the city 7 times and took the city. I'm somewhat inclined to believe that that might have been the Sabbath, because it's a very holy day, and while it would be a day of rest, it's such a day that they did not siege the city by attacking it. All they did was walk around and then shout with some horns blowing. This is the idea of a sieged city, all right? High wall Jericho sieging a city is a thing that takes months, if not years. A siege is never good. It drains your resources. It takes a ton of time. It's like impossible to get through the walls. Go through all history. Sieging walled cities is so bad that if you read Sun Tzu's The Art of War, it straight up tells you never do that. That is the absolute last worst case scenario. Don't siege cities. It's just going to be a waste of time. So this is a group of people who just, with holy power, marched around the city 7 days in a row and then destroyed its walls by the blowing of trumpets and the shouting of voices. This is the power. What a powerful thing. So again, I am curious which of these days was the Sabbath day. Was it one of the days prior, or was it the last day that they actually stormed the castle? that is something to think about. I'm very curious, and I leave it to the listeners to go ahead and do some research and let me know. I'll be probably doing so myself after this recording out of curiosity. Now, moving that to the side, we see that during this time, Joshua makes it clear, nothing that you take from this city will be taken. Everything that you conquer today is not for you. It's for God. So we're destroying everything. Every man, woman, and child, every animal, nothing is for us to take. The gold and silver and so on, that will go into the holy treasury, but the rest of the city's contents, eradicate it. Totally wipe it out. So, exception being Rahab and her family inside of her house because of the deal that she made with the spies, and it's clear and nice to see they honored the deal. Now, what's also interesting, I mentioned this before, but they were warned not to make covenants with the people of these places, and they went ahead and did so. So the question is, does the presence of Rahab and her people, is that a bad thing, or is this, do they secretly, do they become sojourners? Right? Are they the stranger? Do they convert? So it says they brought out all her families and placed them outside the camp of Israel. So if they're outside the camp, that's also where you typically put people who are impure and need to be purified. They're not part of the congregation. But then afterward, they came in. And so I'm going to go so far as to say they burnt the city with fire and all that was in it, right? So by doing this, First, they were outside the camp, then they burned everything. Now that that's been done, it says Rahab the harlot and her father's household dwelt in the midst of Israel to this day. So first they're outside the camp, then they burn the city, then she comes into the camp. Could this burning also be a purification of her and her family? Is this what allowed them to now enter the camp? Their condition of being impure outside whatever it was goes away. They dwell in the midst of Israel. They become part of Israel. And to even say they dwell in the midst of Israel, had they become Bnei Israel, or are they simply sojourning there? It's not clear. But to say they dwelt in the midst of Israel to this day makes me think that her people are a member of Israel. At the very least, the legions have taken in this family to be sojourning forever as honored guests. Whether or not they converted is irrelevant, though it would be curious. I would not be surprised if her ancestry connects to someone else later on, but it is certainly significant that this family was uniquely spared. How does it happen like that? Well, she honored God and the people of God. Those who bless you shall be blessed. Those who curse you shall be cursed. She blessed them by protecting them. Thus was she and her family blessed altogether for multiple generations. Something that really stuck with me about Rahab and her story, and I really wanted to focus on it. The last thing I'll mention here, Joshua says, "Cursed be the man before the Lord that rises up and builds this city Jericho with the loss of his firstborn son that shall lay its foundation." So basically, Joshua is saying, if anybody rebuilds this city, let it come at the cost of their firstborn child. So he's cursing the land or the city of Jericho to be condemned forever. And that is, with the loss of your firstborn, will the foundation be, and with the loss of your son, will you set up its gates. And with that, this was a major conquest. Again, Jericho is this super impregnable fortress of a city, amazing walls. Now imagine what the PR looks like for Joshua and his army all across the land. Have you heard the news? Have you heard? Those Israelites led by Joshua took down the city of Jericho in just 7 days. 7 days! Can you believe that? Oh, we're done for. Head for the hills. Run away. That's the kind of news, right? So his fame was throughout the entire land. So here we have it, a very, very powerful opening act for the campaign of the Israelites claiming the promised land. What's to come next time? Well, let's find out next week. Until then, this has been Shmuel Moshe with the Weekly Parashahcast saying thanks for listening, and I hope you'll tune in next time. Until then, as always, Baruch Hashem.